Welcome along, my aspiring allies, and thank you for joining me on this most recent episode of the Speaking of Inclusion podcast. This is the show where we have the conversations on the topic that are a little bit taboo or maybe make us a little bit uncomfortable, and they help us get over the fear of putting our foot in it. Now, I have just wrapped with a conversation with the amazing Grace Mosuro. Now, Grace uses the pronouns she and her, and she is an inclusion strategist. And I can tell you, we have gone around the houses on our conversation. It was amazing. So we started off talking about kind of trying to stay motivated in the world of DEI, and then we went sideways. As you know, I don't edit on this show, so the conversation went wherever it took us. We have talked about racism, pronouncing names, and our general purpose when it comes to staying in the world of DEI. So hopefully this is going to be a really insightful conversation for you. Now, Grace herself is a Nigerian-born, UK-raised mother, breast cancer thriver, and a dedicated advocate for all of the work that we do in equality, diversity, and inclusion. And it's her inspiring journey through overcoming cancer that propelled her into the passion that she has for affecting change and ensuring that everyone can bring their authentic selves to work and have the equal opportunities they need to succeed and to thrive. So she is a podcast host herself. So she hosts the Organizational Inclusionist podcast. So please go and check that out on your preferred podcast platform. And she's also a public speaker and the CEO and founder of Acquaintance Consulting. So that's her organization. And there will be links to all of those things in the show notes so that you can go and find her and connect with her. And the work that she does really, as a conclusion, is to draw on the lived experience that she has had to support organizations to start finding out their why for doing the work of inclusion and trying to build strategies and trainings that are going to help them to succeed on their own organizational inclusion journey. So without further ado, I would like to pass you over to the conversation that Grace and I had. She is a wonderful human. She is fascinating to talk to, and I really hope that you enjoy listening to this as much as I have just enjoyed having this conversation. So please welcome Grace Mosuro on the Speaking of Inclusion podcast.
To do that today. So yeah, but no, other than that, I'm great. I'm really good, thanks.
Can I just say, when you're doing that, your arms look incredibly good.
Thanks.
I was just like, oh,
I do train.
Look at that.
You've just made my morning.
That's hot as hell. I was like, I want to walk around like this all the time.
Literally, I've been slogging away at the gym, and I was in the gym, the changing room yesterday, moaning to someone about, I'm killing myself and I'm not seeing any difference.
Oh,
that is just,
there it is. I often find sometimes if I'm drinking a cup of tea in the bathroom before I get in the shower, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'll do. Then I'm like, I have to drink a cup of tea like this all the time, and I'm just going to look really weird for other people.
That's what does my head in. It's like I cannot flex every single day. Like, come on, this is ridiculous. Love.
There you go. We'll have to create some opportunities for somehow on Zoom for a bit of a stretch so that everyone can go,
oh,
Grace is amazing.
Love.
Cool. Sorry, I interrupted you when I said that. You were going to say something else.
I was just going to say plodding away, like, talking about lots of issues, preparing for work, just loads, but can't complain at all. Can't complain. Good. You look really well.
Thank you. I feel it mostly. Well, do you know what? It's a bit of a merry-go-round at the minute because I'm definitely slapping like the start of the perimenopausal journey, which is kicking my ass. I've got to be honest.
It's not pleasant at all.
It's not fun, is it?
No, and I experienced it early because of my cancer medication. Yeah. So I literally I've never felt more respect for women that go through menopause, because I was like, yo, I understand now. Like, one of my colleagues years ago would be in the office and just randomly start going, and I was like, what? She's like, oh, I can't take it. And that was literally my life. Like, luckily for me, it's eased off because I've come off some of the medication.
Okay.
But I'm just like, wow, people really need to talk about this a lot more, and they need to do a lot more about it. Like,
I've recorded a couple of podcast episodes on it, and it's and I feel the guilt of it as well, and I guess this is with everything though, right? You don't know until you know, and then when you know, you're like, oh, How are
Yeah.
we not talking about this? Like, everybody needs to know how terrible this is, only because we now understand it because we're going
Yeah.
through
And
it.
I think as well, like it was taboo, wasn't it? Anything that was
Absolutely.
women's issues was taboo. You couldn't
I
talk about
know.
it.
Do it quietly or do
Um, exactly. But I do remember in secondary school, I was so naughty. Like when
it.
my teachers, you know, if I forgot homework or I just didn't want to do something and I had a male teacher, I'd be
Mm,
I'm on my period, sir. And that would just shut them right up.
I know. You get out of almost anything, couldn't you? Like, I didn't go for many swimming lessons. It's
I
just
love it. My
like,
swimming teacher was a woman. She was not having it. She was
yeah.
like, I'll help you, Grace. Don't worry.
Yeah, you're like, oh, okay, thanks. Yeah, cool. But one thing I'm really like last week, this week's a lot better. So that's probably why I'm looking a bit better this week because I'm not in such a pit of like, "Ah." But
Yeah.
last week, it's the anxiety
Mm,
and like the insecurities.
yeah.
And it like I genuinely last week thought I was going insane because I knew it was hormones. Like my brain knew, and
Mm,
yet my being, I wasn't entirely sure if I was going to kill myself or someone else.
yeah.
It could have gone either way.
It's
I just wanted
mad.
to lay on the floor and do nothing.
It's mad. But that's why we need to talk about it so much more. I remember when I was in the height of it, anything would like panic me. And I had to say to my ex-husband, because he has this habit, he stopped it now because I have given him the heads up, but he used to send me WhatsApp saying, please, can you call me as soon as you're free? And I'm now panicking, like, what's
You're like, the
happened?
world's
My
ending. Yeah.
daughter okay? And I had to say to him, please, 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 if it's not like world's ending, just call me or put in the message what it
Give
is you want to talk
context.
about, because otherwise my heart just goes.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
like, all right, calm down. I was like, you just have no clue, you don't get it. He
Yeah.
gets it now though. He would not, he's very careful about what he sends me now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, that's just good practice for everybody, right? Isn't it? But then
Yeah.
especially when you have to layer in like that, I'm finding it like I hadn't realized how much I hadn't suffered like with general PMT kind of those sorts of things. I hadn't
Yeah.
realized how easy I'd had it until now all this stuff's going on. I'm like, fuck, if this is what it's like, I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, right, now I get it. I just feel like a mad person all of the time. And I'm like, no, I don't, this isn't okay.
Yeah, but I think as long as I always think like as long as I know why it's happening, then I've got an anchor. Like I know I'm going
Yeah.
to come out of it. I know why it's happening and I can self-regulate a lot better. So that's
Oh,
obviously as women, we're always solutions focused.
yeah.
Because I know the way out of this, it's going to be fine.
I mean, good for you. You are clearly better at it than me. Because I'm like now, with the benefit of being a week on, going, okay, all right, now we're good. But when I was in it, I was just like, I'm worthless. I'm terrible. No wonder nobody loves me. No wonder I'm on my own. Like, and I
I
was
love
properly in
you.
it. And I know it's nonsense. Like, I know
Yeah,
it's nonsense, but none of that mattered. Like,
no, I
it's
get
just,
you. I get you.
yeah.
The
But then you
joy.
come out the other side and you're like, who was that person? Who were they? What were they doing in my life? Because that's not me.
I love it. You should give that person a name though, if she ever pops
Shit,
up
shouldn't
again.
I?
Yeah,
Actually, now I'm thinking, I'm like, yeah, this is actually really good social media content, isn't it? I'm going to name them and
100%.
have a chat about them. Right. Okay, let me write that down.
100%.
I'm going to, what should I name my anxiety and then I'll credit you?
I don't I always like think too. So when I was younger, we used to like when I watched these like American programs, they used to have this crazy woman, this crazy black woman called Shaniqua. You can't call her Shaniqua.
I'm definitely not doing
No.
that. No, that feels
But like
really
when
inappropriate.
I feel like I'm going crazy, I'm like, Shaniqua, behave yourself. But think of like a character that when you were
Yeah.
younger, you just associated with madness and call her that, a
I'm trying to
female.
think of like a character that really ticks me off.
Yeah. But no, I don't pick someone that ticks you off because you want to love that
Oh
character,
yeah, that's true.
even in
Yeah.
her madness. Like you want to show her love. So like
Yeah.
think of something that like someone that was a little bit out there but did make you chuckle. And then yeah, name her that person.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'll have a
Show
little
her
think
some
about
love.
that. Thank you.
Pleasure.
And I'm just thinking, definitely not Shaniqua. Although I could do that and then I could get all of the I could show all the reaction videos of people going, this is blatantly why this is a bad idea.
I love it.
Yeah, but now also I'm also thinking in my mind, like, because I record everything that we do, like this bit won't make it into the podcast. But now I'm also thinking I might do an outtake of it, like at some
Oh,
point, if it's okay with you to tag
of
it
course.
into here's how a conversation unfolded, and this is where I got to, and this is why it's important.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely do it. That would be funny. I'll comment and interact without a doubt.
yeah. Because that's because of half of my thinking as well. I like because this is the gold, right? Isn't it as well? This is stuff that people just don't hear that other people talk about, and this is actually like this is real.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. So true. So true. I've actually been thinking about doing my blooper videos of like when my social media person says, "Oh, Grace, you need to record a video about this topic." And I'm like, I've got to do my hair. And then I start talking and mess up and I'm like, we go again.
Yeah.
I was like, I should actually save these bloopers and just do one at the end of the month. Like, FYI, it looks clean, but this is the mess behind it.
Yeah. But I think people would love it. I
I think so
genuinely
as
do.
well. I think it just
Yeah.
humanizes it. And everyone's probably got loads of bloopers. It's like, let me share some of mine.
Yeah. I put one out. It wasn't really. I've started calling it like the off the editing floor, and it was just like stuff like this. And it was with when I did it with Katie Hunter Waite, and we were talking about loneliness, but we went really off on a tangent. And I can't even remember what we were talking about now, but it was something quite ridiculous. And I just cut the minute of it and said, look, here you go. Here's something stupid as well. Put that out because I just thought it was so hilarious. Like both of us just like snort laughing at whatever it was we were talking about. And it's like, it's just funny, isn't it?
No, definitely. And I think with everything that's going on at the moment, we all need a bit of laughter. So
Yeah,
I'm here for it completely.
yeah, yeah. And I guess this segues really nicely, doesn't it? Because actually, if we're going to start talking about like, well, how do we stay motivated when we're talking about inclusion? Because
Yeah,
like we're committed to the cause and we want to show up, but
yeah,
also it's heavy work, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, it's so, so true. I think that like for me, staying motivated is it's like I have no choice. Do you know what I mean? For me, this is exactly why I'm here. It's my purpose.
Yeah.
So it's like, girl, you better get your head up and you better like carry on with what you're doing and you better kind of keep talking the talk and walking the walk because we always talk about we will be really happy when there is no need for our jobs. But I actually think, and this isn't to say that we're not going to achieve the inclusion that we want to, but I actually think there should and will always be a place for inclusion consultants because inclusion is evolutionary. As the world changes, as people change, as communities change, as teams change, that will always impact kind
Yeah.
of what inclusion looks like in organizations. So my view is actually I'll be really happy when everyone feels like they can come into work as their full selves, right? But I'll also still be there holding your hand to maintain
True.
that environment. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what really motivates me is actually this work is never going to be done, but it's about how we continue to innovate, how we continue to speak to present day lived experience, what's not worked, and what we need to do to improve it. So I feel like there's always so much to do, and that keeps me really
Yeah.
motivated, without a doubt. Even despite all of the noise, I think, don't get me wrong, when I hear people like Mr. Tesla over there and,
Yeah.
you know,
I'm sorry, that was a reaction, wasn't it? Yeah.
and Mr. Trump Towers over there, I'm like, I don't know. It does like I roll my eyes. I might like sigh because it is exhausting hearing bigoted opinions about such an amazing thing that we're trying to do. Um, but then I get excited because I'm like, actually, you talking in the way that you're talking really highlights to people that there is still a massive need for diversity and inclusion work. And thank you. At the end of
Yeah.
the day, you're speaking to what we're trying to change and improve. So even though I don't like to hear it, I think I always like to look at there's always positives out of everything. Like even when we look at COVID-19 and lockdown, my positive was I got to spend more time with my daughter than I'd ever
Mhm.
spent with her. I got to be still. I got to learn how to do loads of different things. Like I loved lockdown. Like I am one of the like crazy ones that's like, I like it here. This is
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, with what we're experiencing with the backlash against diversity, equality, and inclusion is, you know, we need to look at the positives and what we get to kind of create and do out of the noise. But I also think for me personally, I love that this divisive talk has been made public, because obviously these conversations take place in people's homes, in you know, in like the smoking lounge or wherever. People are having these conversations on a day-to-day. And I think what's happened with it becoming public is that those people that were having those conversations in silence have now come out publicly saying, yeah, I agree. Da, da, da. And what I love is that firstly, you're able to be authentic. Like, this is how you feel about it. Awesome. But what it also does is it shows the voices that maybe have been getting in the way of organizations trying to drive inclusion in their spaces, and really helps organizations to see where the challenges still lie. You know, who are the people that are really against this, and how do we engage them to understand where that fear, that anger, that rage comes from, so that we can bring them along on the journey with us. I think I did a post about this recently, talking about, you know, like, you need to listen to the people that are against what you're trying to do, because there's a reason they're against it. They either don't understand why you're doing it, they don't understand how it's going to impact them, they don't understand how it's going to be good for them, which means there's work for you to do. Like, you need to bring those people along on the change with you, because the best change happens with your people, not to them. So I do, you know, I think the noise is frustrating, it's exhausting sometimes. On a bad day, it's draining, but there are so many positives that come out of this visibility. And I'm really excited about what we're learning as people from all of this as well. And I'm also really grateful, just seeing all of the allies just speak out and speak up and say no. Because I think if we're being really transparent, the only issues that people have with DEI is when we talk about race. If we look back at all the, you know, if we look back at all the gender equality kind of drives and the pushes to kind of increase, you know, senior leadership, female presence, all of that has been done. It's all happened, right? But as soon as we start to say, you're still not looking at race, guys, like the figures still show that, what is it, 4.6% of senior leadership roles are held by people that are Black, Asian, or from another ethnicity. Like, that in itself speaks to the fact that you're not tackling race. And so what I feel like, and it's clear obviously as well from the specific things that have been said and the specific things that have been done to some people, particularly in leadership roles in the States, is that when we try and drive race equity, people don't like it, right? And you know, and I'm a Black woman, so for me, like, this is personal. But also, I'm raising a Black woman. Like, she's going to be, she thinks she's a Black woman already, but she's going to be a Black woman one day, right? So right now, she's and for me, this is really, really important. Like, why aren't we talking about race? Like, race is a myth. It is a myth that was created, and we've all just run with it. And, you know, some of us benefit from that myth and some of us don't. And it's like, actually, if you appreciate and accept that it's a myth, like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? We should all have equal access to opportunity. And until we do, we need to keep talking about race equity. And I'm going to keep talking about it.
No, oh my God, so much that you've just said there that I'm like nodding away, going, yep, totally. And my brain's just firing. And there's so many questions I've got around all of that. And I think coming back to what you were kind of originally saying, actually, about, like, in this work, it will be an amazing, like, position to be in if we could just turn around and go, oh yeah, inclusion consultants, we don't need them anymore. But I think you're so right when you say, like, there will always be an other. There will always be something that, you know, we get used to something, it becomes a status quo. And then, like you say, we evolve as a species, and there's always something we don't know. There's always, you know, there'll be people's identity now, and they'll know who they are and what they want, but they're not okay to speak about it because it's not safe.
Yeah.
And until we can create spaces where people can fully speak about all of their experiences and identities, and even if we get there, like in my mind, the hope is if we can get to a space, and then coming to your like your last point there about speaking about race, if we can get to a space where we can understand like the historic and inherent structural systems that we have created that are the absolute barrier, like absolute barriers. They are by design and doing exactly what they were supposed to do. And if we can get to a space where we've unpacked those, and then going forward, it's okay, now we're simply dealing with the evolution of the understanding that comes from taking away almost that, you know, the societal cages we built for ourselves. Like that's not an operating system. Like we're just waiting for the update, aren't we? Like it doesn't work anymore. So I kind of feel like we can get rid of one thing, but there will always be that evolution of, okay, now what does that mean? Because that's uncharted territory, and that's what we need to navigate. But we're trying to do two things simultaneously, whereas, you know, to your point, like, yeah, we're going to make some headway if we try and deal with the evolutionary stuff, but until we deal with the systemic created oppressive systems that we've got, like we're never going to get there. And we have to have those conversations. And when you were saying there about like the, you know, yeah, when we talk about gender, and then when we talk about race, I find this so much in the conversations that I have as well, because when we talk about like, okay, but I do a lot of work with men, right? When we're talking to men, and it's like, yeah, but can we understand that there are things that you might know that might actually be a little bit sexist, and you just don't realize they're a little bit excessive? Yeah, totally, absolutely. I'm here to learn, whatever. Okay. Can, as a white person, you understand there might be things that you're doing that are a little bit racist, but you just don't know they're a little bit racist? No, I'm not a racist. I'm absolutely not a racist. Okay. But if we can accept through a gender lens that there are things you don't know and understand that might mean that you're participating in thoughts and behaviors that are a little bit sexist, how can we not apply that same logic? No, I'm definitely not a racist. And it's like, okay.
And that's the thing. I think people need to separate that. Is doing something that is or could be seen as racist does not make you a racist. In the same way that if you accidentally deliver a microaggression to someone, that doesn't make you a racist. It doesn't mean that you are just an ass and, you know, you're trying to be horrible. It doesn't mean that. Like, and I think that's what, as people, we need to get better at accepting, is that doing so. And I say this to my daughter a lot, like I've never in my life called my daughter naughty, because she is not a naughty person, but she might do something that is naughty. And I think it's really important that as people, we understand the importance of language and what it means. And that if we accidentally do something, or if we, you know, do something that is racist or is sexist or is ableist, it doesn't mean that that is who we are, but it does mean that the action was that. And it's important that we recognize and separate the action from who we are and who we want to be. But it does, and I think that you know, that response again really emphasizes that race has still not been tackled. Like it's still, it should, you know, I in a post that I did earlier this week, I talk about, can we just lean in, instead of all this, let's get comfortable with being uncomfortable, can we just lean into the fear until everyone's comfortable? Like, just lean in, forget your comfort until everyone is comfortable. You shouldn't want to be comfortable. Like you shouldn't want to. And I think, you know, the race element, the more we talk about it, the easier it gets. And I love it when people come to me and they ask me questions about my race, or ask me questions about certain terms and things like that, because that excites me, because you're trying to learn and you're trying to do things differently. And I think that even when we've had the conversation and they walk away from that, they walk away differently. Like you can see the confidence. And I think people need to understand that when we have these conversations, actually they can be really empowering. Like they can really, really raise you up as an individual. to drive change in your space more confidently.
Yeah, totally. And for me, it comes back to that kind of the fundamental, like almost statement of like, we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, you know, certainly in the UK, and I would say most Western education systems, like we're not taught about the history of racism properly. Like, you know, they might get a week on the curriculum where they will talk about, oh, I mean, God, I don't remember doing it at school, but maybe it happened. But I remember speaking to a parent whose child was at school, and her child was asked, as a black child, as part of this class, to list the pros and cons of slavery. Right? And it's just like, are you kidding? And this is in our education. This was maybe only a couple of years ago. And it's like, that's a problem, right? That is a huge problem.
Yeah, it just
And
blows my mind. I'd have been in the head teacher's office.
she was. She was. And quite rightly so, because it's and that's what we're kind of dealing with, isn't it? This kind of the I'm going to go with as white people, we're so fragile to have this conversation because we're not exposed to it up until the point now all of a sudden everyone's talking about it, and we're not equipped to have that conversation because our egos can't handle it, because it's almost like everything's fine, shit, everything's not fine.
Yeah.
And we're like, hang on a minute, when did this happen? And for anybody that's ever had any exposure to it, they're just like, what do you mean, when did it happen? Like forever is when it happened.
Yeah. I think what I also find really interesting is, so I feel like, and obviously I'm not a white person, so I can't necessarily speak to it, but I also feel like when we talk about, you know, the history of slavery and the legacy that is left behind, I feel like a lot of people get angry because they feel like they're being blamed. But how can you be blamed for something you did not do? You weren't here for it. What we're asking you to do is to understand that it happened and the legacy that it's left behind, and why that means we need to do this work so that we can balance the inequity, right?
Yeah.
But what I also find, like when I was growing up, in school, we were taught that basically slavery was an American thing. And we had this hero called William Wilberforce who fought against it in Britain. And he is the reason we don't have slaves in Britain. That's how it was pitched to me. That's exactly how it was blamed on America.
Actually incorrect.
Exactly. It was blamed on America. I learned so much about the slave trade from the American,
over there,
like from
yeah.
over there. And then I learned so much about the abolition of slavery over here. I learned very little detail about Great Britain's role in slavery. It looked like, the objection against it, how it ended up, you know, being approved and whatever, like as in being abolished, you know, as in like the more sinister bits about how it, do you know what I mean? The fact that actually financially people were paid, this, that, and the other. Like we
Yes.
didn't learn any of that detail.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't then. I don't know if they, I don't think they do, because my sister.
I'm gonna hazard a guess. Still not. Because
Yeah,
but back to your point then around comfort, right? Because it is a really uncomfortable, I'm gonna go with, I don't know, like ancestral legacy to get your head around. And you're right, like I'm not responsible for anyone other than me and my own actions. Like that is where my responsibility starts and ends. And I guess if I have children, I'm responsible for raising them. Like, but ultimately they're responsible for themselves, but I'm responsible for what I imprint on them.
absolutely.
And but also, you know, it's kind of like, and I can accept that, you know, I'm not, you know, I didn't kind of come out of a cabbage patch. Like I have got people that came before me, and therefore they did have behaviors and thoughts and feelings, and they were participating in whatever they were participating in. And not all of those things will be nice things. And I have to understand then that everything that happened before I arrived is something I need to know about, because it contributes to the society that I now live in.
Exactly.
And I get to choose how to participate in that society. And that's information for making those choices.
Definitely.
But that's really hard, isn't it? Like that's really hard to almost like academicized, that's not a word, is it? To kind of, I'm going to make a language up now. Why
Do
not,
it.
right? I'm responsible for me.
Exactly.
But it is hard, because it is being able to step out of ourselves and our own ego and our own self-preservation almost, to really examine something else and go, yeah, that's pretty bad. And then back to your very original point, like, what does that mean for me, and my fears and who I am and the beliefs I have about myself as a person, and and it throws so much other stuff up. And recognizing that if we then choose to go, oh, that's really difficult, I'd like to put it down over there and not think about it, that in itself is a massive privilege, to be able to say, yeah, I'd rather not, actually, I'm just going to go to the shop.
And I think as well, like, what I'm really concerned about and seeing is, I feel like, the legacy of slavery, but also, the need for inclusion work and what we're trying to do with it, is still not being taught to those coming up in the school system now, right? So we potentially are going to end up in 20 years still doing and still talking about the exact same things, because we refuse to tackle it at the point where we are feeding our children, right? So our children are going through the school system, some of them with significantly more privilege than others, right? And we're not teaching them very, very early on that privilege exists. And I know schools, and I have the utmost respect for teachers. I've got so many friends that are teachers, and I know what their job is like on a day-to-day, and I know what they're required to do. But someone needs to take the reins when it comes to what we educate our children about. Create a test at the end, I don't care. Create a test, grade them, whatever. But it needs to be built into the school system, because the earlier we can start with this education, the better off we will be as a people. Because if you're taught about it when you are in primary school, and you go into more detail as you grow, by the time you're an adult in the world of work, there will be no discomfort, because you've been talking about it, you've been learning about it, you've been understanding that you're not to blame, like you've been understanding you're not to blame, but this system still exists. And you come out of that system wanting to affect change, because we go through the school system in the main learning that we want to do well, we get taught to do well, we get taught
as an individual.
Exactly, as an individual, we get taught to do well, we get taught to do our best with our tests, and we get taught to take what we've learned into the world and do the best we can with that, right? And if we're including the history of slavery in more depth, if we're including the history of inequality, if we're including how you create diversity, equality, and inclusion in the school curriculum, game changer.
I couldn't agree more. And as you're saying that, what's kind of like coming into my mind is, we participate in education as individuals, and yet we get into the world of work where we're expected to like be cohesive and work as a team, and be productive, and make sure that if we're going to be a people manager, that we know how to get the best out of our teams, and it's like, okay, but we're not equipping people with like critical thinking skills or the ability to be a leader. We're teaching them for the ability to work as hard as they can to be the number one. And if they can't get to number one, well, then maybe accept that, but work as hard as you can to maybe not be at the bottom. And it's kind of like, that's not inspirational or aspirational for anyone for the real world, unless, okay, maybe unless you want to be an athlete. And then if you pick a track that is absolutely always about an individual pursuit where you need to be number one. But quite frankly, even then, that might be your passion or your paid job, but that's also not life, is it? If you go through life saying, I'm just going to be the best I can and to hell with everybody else, it kind of makes you a bit of a psychopath. So it's like,
that's the thing as well, like even athletes or entrepreneurs that run their own businesses, they all have teams around them. Like, do you know what I mean? They all have teams around them. They have people that are developing them, but also they have people that they're developing. And I think it's really important that we learn more about how to look after each other, because I don't think we're taught enough about that. Like, we as a human race do not understand how to love each other in the way that we should. And that is heartbreaking.
Yeah. And I kind of want to take a second just to let that sit, because actually I think that's a really profound statement. Like, we are praised for individual achievement and taking care of ourselves and those immediately around us. That we have, and I can't help but think that it's by design, we have removed the necessity of community. You know, we have removed our capacity to love other people and to lean on other people and to allow other people to lean on us, and you know, and to let those walls down and just be vulnerable and care.
Yeah.
And see humanity in one another.
Yeah. And I feel like as you know, something bad has to happen to us as humans for us to allow that to happen, which is such a shame, because you know, I've never said hello to as many people as I had done during lockdown. Like, you know, when we all got allowed out for 20 minutes of exercise a day, I don't know how many people greeted me along the way. That never happened. But all of a sudden, we're in lockdown and everyone cares about everybody else. You know, people are texting in WhatsApp groups. They are knocking on your door to leave packages for you, or to leave like food or even a note just to check in. And then, you know, when we look at everything that's happened with the noise around diversity and inclusion, I've never seen us as inclusion professionals support each other as much as we have done since that backlash. Like, this sense of community that I see in this space as a result of that is so, so powerful. And I really want us to keep that energy, because you know, I know there's the scarcity mindset of, you know, if I'm too close to you, you know, my client might see you and they might want you instead of me, or whatever it is. But actually, there is so much more value that we add to this space when we work together and when we talk about issues and when we bring our different insights, that yeah, that value just we can't let that go now. I won't be.
No, I 100% agree with you. And actually, I wonder, again, I guess it's the space that we work in, so I haven't got another frame of reference for it, but I wonder if there's something about particularly people that work in the inclusion related roles, or coaching, or those kind of roles where you really are connecting with other people. We don't have that same fear of competition, because it's not competition. It's just about, like, it is about community. It is about actively recommending other people, isn't it? And kind of knowing that there are, I for one firmly believe there's enough shit out there. Like, I can't fix it on my own, and I don't want to fix it on my own. I want whatever specific challenges people are facing in their organizations to have the right person for them to help fix it, because ultimately the goal isn't for me to get paid, the goal is for it to stop.
Exactly.
So
don't get me wrong, we do all want to get paid.
I mean, oh yeah, quite frankly, yes, we need to get paid, like, we've got bills.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. Like, you know, I know what I know at the end of the day, but I know so many other people that know different things to me. And one of the things that I always talk about is the fact that no one is you, right? The value that you add can never be taken away.
Yeah.
And I think that it's really important that we make space and time for understanding and appreciating the value that everyone in our network adds. Because if we are trying to create change, what we've been doing before, working in silos, going in and, you know, doing things really generically and just like being really fluffy,
Yeah,
it hasn't worked.
do inclusion, but do it nicely.
You know, it's not worked. And don't get me wrong, like I always, with my podcast that you've been on, I talk about the fact that I created that space because I wanted to have some of the conversations that weren't being had, but I wanted to create a safe space for my guests to join that conversation, because I don't believe in, you know, making people feel bad when we talk about certain things. Like, for me, and I also know that if people are aggressive when they're trying to like tell me something, or if they are patronizing or whatever, I've shut down before you've even said your second sentence. I'm not listening now, but I might be nodding and smiling. That's just
Yeah.
life. But I no longer care.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so for me, it is really important that we have these conversations and we support organizations in the way that we do, which is we lead with love at the end of the day. So I am going to help you to identify where you're not, you're not hitting the mark. You probably already know where you're not hitting the mark, but we're going to talk about it, and we're going to talk about it in a way where you can see that this is just the starting point. This isn't going to be your end point, especially because you're doing the work. We just need to be okay with that, and just be okay with being vulnerable to the fact that we've maybe not been doing the best job, but we want to, and this is how we get there.
Yeah.
I think that's so important.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's so interesting, because I know with my clients, one of the conversations we inevitably end up having is around like, oh yeah, but if we start talking about this stuff, like then the people might know there might be a problem, and then people will know there's a problem, and then like our reputation will be ruined. I'm like, if you've got a problem, everybody already knows you've got a problem. If you start talking about the fact that you know you've got a problem, people are going to trust you because you're telling them, oh yeah, we recognize we've got a problem.
Yeah, I would add as well, like, recognizing you've got a problem, but also showing your people what you're going to do to resolve that.
Exactly.
And holding your hands up when it's like, actually, we know this is a problem. We have no clue how we're going to fix this, but we're going to bring people in who do.
Yeah.
I think that's really important, is once you identify the problems, the worst thing you can do is park them. Or send comms out saying, guys, this is what you said. Thank you for your feedback. And then do nothing with it.
Yeah. And then a year later send out another survey to say, we really value your feedback. And everyone's like, yeah, sure you do.
Yeah, and then wonder why the response rate is so low, and then, try and bully people into responding. No, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
You're not.
But it's like, we tried that approach. Shall we do it? Should we do it differently? Should we give something else a go? Yeah, absolutely. So I was really curious as well, because when you were talking then about how like it takes events, doesn't it? Like big events that kind of trigger something in us. And as you were saying that, it kind of reminded me of like, well, getting into inclusion work in the first place, right? Because I didn't come out of school thinking, I am going to change the world. I have a purpose bigger than myself, and this is what I'm going to do. I basically just came out and I was like, I want to buy videos. I'm going to earn some money. So something occurred in my life that made me think, yeah, actually the systems are broken and I want to do something about it. So I'm just curious then, like, is there an event in your life that made you think, okay, this is where I want to be, and this is how I know I found my purpose?
Yeah, so I would say the trigger event, even though there were a number of events, the trigger event for me was getting breast cancer. And it wasn't even just that, it was one specific incident. So I was receiving acupuncture from a consultant at Royal Marsden, and bless her, she was doing small talk so that I'd get distracted and like not notice the needle that she was sticking literally in my head. And she said, oh, what do you do for a living? And I told her what I do. And I said, but I do feel like this experience is really giving me the kick up the bum that I need to change my career. She said, oh, I'd be careful, because now that you've had cancer, it's going to be really difficult to get a job.
Oh.
And I literally wanted to cry. Like I felt shit. And
Wow.
I sat there and I just like, I didn't know what to say. Like she didn't even notice that she'd said anything wrong. She carried on talking. And I walked out that room after my appointment, and I said, no, I need to stop playing now. Like, this is exactly why I need to do the work that I want to do, because, not only is this a real experience for anyone that's had cancer, because once you've had cancer, you are then legally disabled for the rest of your life. So I now have, I always look at the plus side. So I now get my prescriptions for free for the rest of my life. Amazing, right? But what that then comes with is, for someone like me who is Black, who is a woman, who comes from a low socioeconomic background, and now is legally disabled, am I going to declare that? Or is that just one too many things to share that could be a barrier to me securing employment. And I think, you know, being Black and being a woman, those are things that I don't even need to declare them. You can see them, right? Those are things that I can't get away from. They are barriers to employment. They are barriers in certain environments. Now telling everyone that I'm legally disabled, I don't think I'm going to do that. And that thinking in itself, even though I have told the world now, because I do what I do, but that thinking in itself was why I was like, actually, no, I'm going to do everything in my power to support people so that they no longer have to worry about that. They no longer have to question if their labels or the labels that have been placed on them are going to get in the way of their lives or of their school experience, of their professional work, etc. After I got breast cancer, we were having a conversation at work, and you know, I talked about it a lot at work, and we ended up doing a survey to ask, has anyone ever had breast cancer or any form of cancer? Because, you know, senior leadership were under the impression it was a very low proportion of the organization. They did the survey, and I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was mind-blowing how many people had it before but hadn't declared. And I thought that in itself is so important, because what a lot of people don't understand is they think that once you've had cancer and you're cancer free, all's great, you know, all's great with the world and it's fine. And it is fine. It's great that we're alive. It's great that we get to do this amazing life. However, what that says to employers is that person going to call in sick loads? Is it going to come back and then we're going to have to pay them sick pay or whatever? How is declaring this to our insurers going to impact the cost of our insurance? How do I manage this person? You know, what can or can't I say? And then add that, you know, this person might be African and they've got a name that's difficult to pronounce. You know, and I'm basing this on someone's filled in, you know, they've sent their CV in, they've filled in the diversity information, and they've declared a disability, they've declared they're Black African, their name is Oluwagbemisola Mosuro, right? Okay, how do I do this? This is a lot, right? And I think, you know, I identify that need, and that was my massive trigger into actually just walking in my purpose now. It's like, actually, I don't like the way this feels for me. And I know I'm not the only person that feels this way. And so it was really important for me to not only change the way that people feel declaring this type of thing, but also to help leaders, to equip leaders with what they need to be able to safely manage, support, encourage, promote these people within their teams. Because a lot of leaders, and I talk about this a lot as well, is the fact that actually discrimination that takes place when you get a CV with a name that's difficult to pronounce, you know, the choice not to progress that CV isn't necessarily because you don't want that type of person working in your team. A big part of it is I can't pronounce that person's name, and I'm really worried that I'll offend them if I pronounce it. So your brain automatically tells you, no,
Keep it
we'll
safe,
go with
right?
John Smith. Yeah, because John's really easy to say. But I can't say that name and I don't want to get in trouble. And people don't understand how much of an impact that has on people's progression. So I was just like, I'm going to come in, I'm going to support organizations, firstly, to get comfortable with not being able to pronounce the name. There are some Nigerian names I can't pronounce, and I have to ask them, like, how do you pronounce your name? I love that when people say that. You know, my surname, people pronounce it in various different ways. If people ask me how to pronounce my name, I love that, because you care, you're interested. You might not get it right. I probably don't say it 100% right. My dad would probably like frown, you still aren't saying it correctly. But it is what it is, you know? People appreciate that you care and that you try.
Yeah. Can I now jump in then, Grace? How do we pronounce your name?
So my dad would pronounce it, and he would, if he was still here, he'd laugh at this and be like, that's actually not how I pronounce it. But it's Mosuro. That's how it's said.
Mosuro.
But yeah, but I say Mosuro.
Mosuro. Okay. So
It's
Mosuro or Mosuro.
Yeah.
Both are acceptable for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I have had people call me Maruso. And it's like, how did you even get there? Because you've moved words around, you've moved letters around at this point. Maruso is not the spelling. So what have you just done? That was lazy.
Mosuro. Yes. So, but and that, right. So that took us what, 20 seconds?
Right,
Right.
exactly. And it's just like, you know, people love that you try, that you make the effort. And also you'll feel so much better for doing it as well. You know, even if you need to write down, you know, how phonetically how to pronounce something and put cards up in your room or in your office so that you
Hmm.
can practice how to pronounce particular names in your
Yeah.
team, go for it. Like do
Yeah.
whatever you need to do.
Yeah. And I can tell you, I've done that with um, even people that I would class my friends when they've got names that I know I struggle to pronounce. I have phonetically broken them down, and I play them on repeat, and I say it out loud when I'm on my own,
Yeah,
because the doing it in your head and saying it out loud are two very different things.
definitely.
And it's almost like you just have to keep doing it, because then eventually it literally does trip off the tongue, because
Mhm,
your mouth knows how to make the sound. Like
exactly.
sometimes it is that basic, isn't it? Is like making your mouth understand how to make the sounds, especially, when they come from kind of nationalities and cultures that where the language doesn't kind of match up. Like I spent some time living in New Zealand, and the inflections of certain words are in different places.
Mm,
So you just have to learn the rhythm of where things go. And
exactly.
like, if you don't know it, you don't know it.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I think yeah, I think we just need to, you know, there are still some like European names. I've seen some of the most complicated European names ever. But people know how to say them. You know, there's um is it Tchaikovsky?
Yeah.
If you
Yes.
see that written down, that
Absolutely. Yeah. And you don't know who Tchaikovsky is. Yeah.
is crazy, right? Like, but we've learned how to say it. Because people care enough to learn. So we just need to care enough to learn.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it's about making it familiar to yourself. Because like
Hmm.
you say, the first time anyone comes across the name Tchaikovsky, you're going to look at it and go, hey.
Yeah,
But it's
exactly.
about making it familiar and knowing that we can say that word. Now, if you asked me to spell it, I couldn't, because I
Same.
know how to say it. I
Yeah,
don't know how to write it down.
yeah.
And okay, so if I was ever in a position where I was going to work with someone whose name was Tchaikovsky, I have to make an effort to go, oh, I know how to say that, but I don't know how to spell it. I'm going to learn.
I'm gonna Google. Google
Yeah,
is my best friend.
yeah, totally.
Yeah, and that's the thing as well. We live in an age where the excuse of I didn't know or I don't have the information doesn't fly. Like
Yeah,
Google is the easiest thing. I remember growing up, if I had questions that my mum didn't know the answer to or just couldn't bother to answer, she'd send me to the dictionary. Do you remember the dictionary?
yeah, yeah. What's that? Yeah.
Exactly.
It's
My
book
daughter
of
would love.
words.
Right. So my mum used to send me to the dictionary, but now, like my daughter would ask me a question and I'd say, go and ask Alexa or go and ask Google. Like we are literally in such an amazing age for
Yeah,
learning.
yeah, we have access. Yeah. And actually, just as a build, when we were talking then about like pronunciation of names, like this and these things, like the same rules apply to many other things, because I'm thinking about, I have friends who are gender fluid, so their presentation of their gender isn't static, and I have to remember that even when their presentation is different, their preference to use either like she they pronouns, so even if they're feeling very masculine presenting, I try and lean into she, because that's their preference.
Mm,
And that is really hard for my brain, because it's not my everyday thing. So I have to remember, especially if we're on Zoom, I can stick a post-it note in front of me that just says in big letters, she, they,
yeah.
because I don't want to get it wrong.
Mm,
And I might get it wrong and they would forgive me, but I don't want them to have to. Like I want to put as many kind of safety nets in place for me, because that's what I'm in control of, my own behavior and my own
mm,
words. And it's kind of the
definitely.
same, isn't it?
I think the thing is as well, like we we need to always have forgiving spirits, right? Because for me, what's really important is effort. And we have the responsibility of continuing to learn, continuing to educate ourselves, and people respect that effort, right? So if we make mistakes while we're learning and we make mistakes while we're still kind of getting up to speed, that's okay. No one's asking you to go on a workshop and leave as an inclusion expert, which you will never be, right?
Even the
And
concept of perfectionism, right, is another, that's the topic of
crazy.
we haven't got time for, isn't it? But
Exactly, it's crazy. Like,
yeah.
I don't ever want to be an inclusion expert, because what that then says is that firstly, I know everything, which I don't. And secondly, that almost implies that we get it, right? That as a society, as organizations, everyone gets it. No, we're
Like
not.
there's a definition of done, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're not there.
yeah, yeah, totally. Right. Grace Mosuro. Mosuro? I know what you think. How would your dad say it? Tell me that one again.
He wouldn't say it like me, but this is close as I can get to it. Mosuro.
Mosuro. Cool.
Yeah.
I like that. I just like the way you say it. Thank you. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me today. Now, I'm really conscious that this is going to, because for me, my brain's already all over the place with like, oh, so many things I want to carry on talking about. And I know there's going to be people listening to this that are going to feel the same. How can people get in contact with you if they want to follow up and ask more questions and bring you into their organization?
So the best way to contact me is probably LinkedIn. So my name will be in the captions of this post, I'm sure. But it's Grace Mosuro on LinkedIn, or via my website, Acquaintance Consulting. And you can book a call in directly from the website, or contact me on LinkedIn and I'll get back to you. But yeah, always happy to continue the conversation with anyone that's interested in doing that.
Awesome. And is there anything that you came and wanted to say that you haven't had an opportunity to say, or any parting words you'd like to leave people with?
Let me think. Parting words, I would just say the work isn't done, right? And now more than ever, we really need organizations to dig into this, and to really think more than doing just the performative. So, doing a workshop here, doing a talk here, that's not enough. And I think my biggest call to action would be to organizations to think long term about inclusion. What does it look like for you? And what do you need to do to get there?
Awesome. Grace Mosuro, thank you so much for joining me on Speaking of Inclusion today.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome along, my aspiring allies, and thank you for joining me on this most recent episode of the Speaking of Inclusion